Mister, could you pretend to be my dad? Just for one day? The little girl pleaded with tears in her eyes. He, a cold and lonely CEO, never thought that request would change his life forever. The clock showed 10:30 in the morning when Benjamin Harper sat down on his usual bench in Central Park. It was a mild Monday, with clear skies and a light breeze that barely moved the tree leaves. Like every week, the CEO of Harper Tech took an hour to read a physical newspaper, one of his few analog habits amid the digital chaos that surrounded him. Dressed in an impeccable grey suit and dark glasses that hid his stern expression, Benjamin seemed unreachable. He didn't greet anyone, didn't return smiles. Around him the world went on, children running, couples strolling, street vendors offering cotton candy. That's when he felt her. He didn't see her coming, but something in the atmosphere changed. A trembling voice, almost a whisper, broke his reading. "Mister, could you be my dad for a day?" He lowered the newspaper slowly and saw her. A girl with light brown hair pulled into two crooked braids looked at him with large, moist eyes that seemed to contain more pain than any 5-year-old should know. "What did you say?" he asked, frowning. "My mom says that she's going to heaven soon. And I'd like her to see that I did have a dad before that happens, even if it's just pretend," said Emma, her voice breaking and her face stained with tears. Benjamin felt a knot in his stomach. He wasn't used to other people's emotions, much less being confronted so directly. "Where's your mom?" he asked, uncomfortable. "At home. She's very tired. I just wanted, I've seen you sitting here many times. You read like dads do in the movies. My mom says you look like a good dad, even though I've never seen you smile." The businessman swallowed hard. What the hell was this child doing alone in a park? Why had she chosen him? "I'm not good with kids," he blurted out without thinking. Emma lowered her head. "It doesn't matter. It would just be for today. You don't have to love me, just pretend a little bit." That "you don't have to love me" echoed in his mind like a distant bell. Something inside him, something old, buried under years of control and ambition, stirred. Against all instinct, he sighed and stood up. "All right. What do you want to do, daughter, for a day?" The girl's eyes sparkled. "I want ice cream." 40 minutes later, Emma was licking a vanilla cone with rainbow sprinkles, sitting next to Benjamin on the same bench. He, still with his coffee in hand, watched her from the corner of his eye, trying to understand how he'd gotten into this situation. "And what else do fake dads do?" he asked with irony. "They go to the fair and win stuffed animals for their daughters and take pictures of them," she said with complete seriousness. "Pictures? I don't like pictures, but moms do," Benjamin huffed. The rest of the day passed in a succession of scenes he never would have imagined living. He won a teddy bear throwing rings, rode the Ferris wheel, suffering in silence every second, and even ate cotton candy that stuck to his fingers like glue. But the strangest thing wasn't all that. It was that amid the noise, the children's screams and the vendors, he heard himself laugh. Him. A dry, brief laugh, almost surprised to come out. Emma had made him laugh by telling him how she used to think penguins were birds in suits. "Why do you laugh like that?" she asked him. "It's been a long time since I did," he confessed without thinking. And then he felt it. It wasn't something huge or cinematic. It was just an internal tremor, as if a crack opened just a little in the armor he'd built so carefully. It was 6:20 in the evening when the girl said in a small voice, "My mom doesn't know I left alone, but she lives close by. Will you walk me there?" "Alone?" Benjamin stopped. "How long have you been in the park?" "Since 9:40. I was waiting for you to arrive." "And if I hadn't come?" Emma shrugged. "I didn't have another plan." Part of him wanted to tell her that was crazy, that it was dangerous, that she could never do that again. But something stronger, perhaps the image of those sad eyes, or the laugh she'd pulled from him hours before, made him nod. "Let's go. I don't want you walking alone at dusk." The house was small, with a modest but clean facade. At the entrance, some pots with wilted flowers and a bicycle with flat tires. Emma pushed the door open carefully. "Mum, I'm back." A weak voice responded from a room at the back. "Where were you, sweetheart?" Emma didn't answer. She just turned and signaled for Benjamin to come in. The man crossed the threshold, uncomfortable as if entering another world. The house smelled of lavender and medicine. Sarah was lying on a couch improvised as a bed. Her face was pale, dark circles under her eyes. But her eyes were just like her daughter's, sweet, alive, hopeful. "Good afternoon," he said, not knowing how to introduce himself. Sarah looked at him for a long moment and understood. She knew immediately. "Thank you for coming," she said, without asking questions. Benjamin didn't know what to answer. Emma ran to her mother, showed her the stuffed animal, told her every detail of the day. She spoke with a joy that filled the room like window light. Sarah just watched her and smiled, but from time to time she looked back at Benjamin with a mixture of gratitude and curiosity. When the girl fell asleep between them, Sarah murmured, "She chose you. I don't know why, but she did, and she chose well." Benjamin didn't respond. He stood there looking at the little girl on the sofa, hugging the teddy bear. He didn't understand what had led him to accept. He didn't understand why he'd spent the whole day with this child. But in that moment, in that humble living room, all he knew was that he didn't want it to end there. The night at Sarah's house was quiet. Benjamin had stayed sitting in a wooden chair, watching Emma sleep on the old sofa, with the teddy bear pressed against her chest. Sarah, lying on the adjacent couch, kept her eyes open, as if she didn't want to miss a single moment. "You don't have to stay," she said in a low voice, barely audible. Benjamin turned his head slightly. "I'm already here." Sarah smiled weakly. "I thank you and for everything." She needed this more than she can express. "I didn't do it out of courtesy," he admitted, surprising himself with his own words. "It was instinct, I suppose. I don't know what led her to choose you, but it wasn't random." "Emma doesn't do anything without thinking," Sarah said with an exhausted tenderness. "For months she's been watching you, every Sunday, from afar. She'd tell me, 'That man looks like he has important answers.'" Benjamin frowned, confused. "Why didn't you tell me he was a stranger? Why did you go along with it?" Sarah looked away toward the ceiling. "Because I saw how you looked at her. I saw something in your gaze that I hadn't seen in weeks. Hope. And because, although I don't understand why you didn't seem uncomfortable, just lost." That comment shook him. Lost? Him? Silence. "How much time?" Benjamin asked without finishing the sentence. Sarah understood. "Not much. A few months, maybe less. The doctors stopped giving exact dates, but Emma doesn't know everything. I told her I'm very tired, that soon I'm going to sleep for a long time." Benjamin nodded slowly. There were no adequate words for that kind of reality. The next morning he woke before everyone. The clock showed 7:05. Sarah was sleeping deeply. In the kitchen, an old coffee maker boiled with a constant murmur. He made coffee without saying a word and went out to the small backyard where a basil plant struggled to stay alive. Emma appeared shortly after, dragging a blanket and rubbing her eyes. "You're still here?" "Yes. Good morning, daughter for a day." She let out a mischievous laugh. "You could be a daughter for 2 days, Dad." Benjamin looked at her, raising an eyebrow. "How many days are you planning this for?" "I don't know, until Mom smiles more." He sighed. "All right. But only if you behave like an exemplary daughter." "Deal," she said, extending her hand to seal the agreement. They spent the day at home. Emma showed him drawings, told him stories about her dolls, even made him try an imaginary soup cooked in a plastic pot. Benjamin, still dressed in yesterday's office clothes, found himself sitting on the floor, playing a monster attacking block castles. Sarah watched from the hallway door. She smiled, but with nostalgic eyes. At noon she got up with effort and offered Benjamin a plate of rice and beans. The three of them sat down to eat. "Do you know how to cook?" Emma asked Benjamin. "Enough not to starve. My mum cooks really good, but now she's too weak. Sometimes I have to make the sandwiches." Sarah lowered her gaze, embarrassed. "She shouldn't have to handle that," Benjamin said. "There's no other option," Sarah responded, without drama. The businessman took a breath. He looked at both of them. And something inside him, perhaps the discomfort of seeing such close injustice, pushed him to speak. "If you want, I can come in the afternoons. I don't work far. Just an hour a day, to play or help with homework, whatever you need." Sarah looked at him with narrowed eyes. "Are you sure? It's not your responsibility." "I don't know if it's responsibility, but I don't want to just disappear from here anymore." She nodded slowly. She didn't ask why. Maybe because the answer was clear in Emma's brightness. And so a strange routine began. Every afternoon, Benjamin stopped by the house. Sometimes he brought donuts, other times he brought children's books. He learned to play bingo, to untangle a doll's hair without ripping it out, and to make Emma laugh just by raising an eyebrow. Sarah, although increasingly weak, began to talk more with him. Sometimes she told him little stories from the past, like when Emma learned to walk in slippery socks, or when she confused the moon with a giant lamp. One afternoon, while Emma napped, Sarah offered him chamomile tea. "I don't understand what brought you here," she told him, "but I'm glad you've changed things." "I don't understand either," he answered. "I just know that when I go back to my empty apartment, nothing makes sense." Sarah looked at him for a long time. Then she smiled, though sadly. "Sometimes what gives life meaning isn't what we plan, but what finds us." Benjamin began arriving earlier. One day he cooked spaghetti with cream and mushrooms. Another day, he taught Emma how to read traffic signs from the window. His world began to compress into that small house. Business video calls were made from the kitchen, and urgent messages arrived while he assembled princess puzzles. His colleagues began to notice him distracted. A partner even joked, "Did you fall in love or what?" He just said, "I'm busy with something important." And yes, he was. He didn't know how it had happened, but Emma had become inevitable, not like a weight, but like an anchor, a place where his mind could rest. One night, as he left the house, Emma ran after him, hugging him around the waist. "Thanks for coming, Dad." Benjamin froze. It wasn't Dad for a day. It wasn't a game. It was real. He looked at Sarah, who watched them silently from the door. She said nothing, just nodded with a look that mixed comfort, fear, and gratitude. He, not knowing what to say, just put his hand on Emma's head. And for the first time in his life, he thought that maybe, just maybe, he could be someone more than a businessman. The hospital room smelled of disinfectant and silence. It was one of those white rooms that seem to swallow emotions, where time stretches as if the clock refuses to move forward. Benjamin stood by the window, looking without seeing. Behind him, Emma drew in a coloring book, sitting in a chair too big for her small body. Sarah slept, with skin paler than ever and chapped lips. Her breathing was slow, irregular. "Do you think Mom is going to heaven soon?" Emma asked without looking up. Benjamin closed his eyes. "I don't know, sweetheart. But we're with her, that's what matters." Emma nodded without words. She was drawing a family, a simple house, a crooked tree, a female figure lying under the sun, and a tall man with a briefcase and a girl holding hands. The doctors weren't optimistic. Sarah had metastases in her lungs and liver. There wasn't much more to do except ease the pain. She had, at best, a couple of weeks left, maybe less. Benjamin left the hospital with a tight heart. He walked aimlessly for a few blocks until he reached a BBQ stand. He wasn't hungry, but he ordered a pulled pork sandwich and a Coke. While eating in silence, he remembered the first time he'd seen Emma. Her little voice, her braids, her broken words. "You don't have to love me, just pretend a little bit." Now the pretending had gotten into his chest and he couldn't get it out. At the office, the atmosphere was different. Cold, impersonal as he used to be. "Harper, you need to sign this before 8, said his assistant, leaving a thick folder on his desk. Benjamin barely looked at it. "Tell Omar to sign in my name. I won't be at tomorrow's meeting." "Again? That's the 4th one you've cancelled this week." Benjamin took off his glasses and looked at her directly. "Do what I told you." She nodded, confused. In the hallways, the murmurs grew. Is something wrong with him? Is he sick? Personal problems? Yes. But not like they thought. He returned to the hospital that same night. Sarah was awake, though weak. She smiled at him as if it were the most natural thing in the world to see him there, as if he were part of her daily landscape. "Emma stayed with my neighbor," she said. "I wanted you to rest." "I can't rest," Benjamin admitted, pulling a chair to her side. There was a long silence. Then, without looking at him, Sarah said, "You've already decided, haven't you?" "What?" "That you're not going to leave her alone." Benjamin swallowed. He took her bony hand gently. "Sarah, I know I have no right, no experience, nothing like that. But if you allow me, I promise to take care of her as if she were mine. I swear on everything I am." Sarah looked at him then. She had tears in her eyes, but not sadness. It was something deeper. Peace. "I knew you would," she whispered. "That's why she chose you, even though you didn't know it." The paperwork was complicated. Benjamin moved heaven and earth to achieve an express adoption, something almost impossible under normal circumstances. But he didn't skimp on lawyers, resources, or time. He called judges, prosecutors, even an old friend who owed him a favor. When they handed him the official temporary guardianship document for adoption purposes, he held it in his hands as if it were gold. In his office, his partners confronted him. "A child? Now you're a dad?" "Yes," he responded without hesitation. "And what about the company, the projects, the European expansion?" "The company will continue, but now my life also has other priorities." "You're making a crazy mistake." "Maybe," Benjamin said, putting on his jacket, "but it's the only one that's made sense in years." The night Sarah died was peaceful. Benjamin was there, sitting beside her, holding her hand. "Can I ask you one more thing?" she whispered. "Of course. Teach Emma not to be afraid of the world, to trust, to love. Don't let her become a lonely girl like I was." He nodded. He couldn't speak. Sarah closed her eyes. She exhaled, and didn't inhale again. Benjamin didn't cry in front of Emma. He stayed firm, serene. But when she fell asleep in her new room, a space in his own apartment that he'd decorated with dolls, books, and soft lights, he locked himself in the bathroom and collapsed on the floor. He cried like he'd never cried before. He cried for Sarah, for Emma, for the life he never thought he'd have, for the man he'd been and the one he was now forced to be. In the darkness of that night, he understood something. Love isn't chosen by blood, it's chosen by decision. And he, Benjamin Harper, had chosen to be a father. 5 years later, the sun streamed through the windows of an elementary school in Brooklyn. Colorful balloons hung from the auditorium ceiling, and a line of children waited their turn to go on stage. Parents, mothers, and grandparents applauded, while cell phones recorded every word, every nervous smile. In the third row, a man in a navy blue suit, with discreet gray at his temples and a warm gaze, applauded discreetly. Benjamin Harper was no longer the same. Next to him, a pink backpack with star patches rested on the empty chair. Its owner, Emma, was about to go on stage. When they called her, she adjusted the blue dress she'd chosen so carefully that morning and walked with a firm step. She was no longer the fragile girl with messy braids. She was 10 years old, spoke confidently, and her smile looked more like her mother's every day. "Hi," she said into the microphone. "My name is Emma Harper, and I want to read a letter I wrote for my mom and for my dad." The auditorium fell silent. Benjamin tensed, feeling something in his chest tighten. "My mom's name was Sarah. She was strong, brave, and never stopped loving me. Not even when her body couldn't handle it anymore. She taught me to be good, to have hope, and to look at the sky without fear. She always told me that someday, whether by miracle or accident, someone would see how special I was, and that someone arrived." Benjamin felt a lump in his throat. "My dad, well, a stork didn't bring me to him. He didn't come out of a princess story. He arrived reading a newspaper, sitting on a bench. He didn't know how to play with dolls or how to do braids. At first, he didn't smile much, but he gave me the happiest first ice cream of my life, and after that he gave me something not all kids have, a home." A mother in the row ahead wiped away tears. "He didn't have to love me, but he chose to. He taught me to ride a bike, not to give up on math, to make pasta without it sticking, and to say no firmly when I don't like something. My dad, Benjamin Harper, is the best dad anyone could choose, and I choose him every day." Emma lowered the paper, smiled at the audience, and then looked straight at Benjamin. "Thank you for staying with me." The auditorium erupted in applause. Benjamin didn't applaud. He stood up, walked to the stage, hugged her in front of everyone, and whispered in her ear, "Thank you for teaching me to be someone better." After the event, as they walked through the nearby park, Emma swung from his hand, like when she was 5 years old. "Were you nervous?" he asked her. "A little bit, but I wanted everyone to know who you are to me." "And who am I?" "My heart dad, the one who takes care of me, who listens to me, who cooks kind of badly but tries." Benjamin laughed. "Just kind of badly?" "Well, sometimes it does taste good." They walked in silence for a few meters. "Mom would be happy," she said suddenly. "I know. Sometimes I feel like she's still here," he responded. "Me too, especially when things get difficult, like she's whispering in my ear, 'Everything will be okay.'" Benjamin looked at her, moved. His daughter was wise. She'd inherited her mother's strength and something new, something of his too, a security built with time and tenderness. At his office, things had also changed. Benjamin delegated more. He no longer spent 12 hours a day in front of screens. He'd installed a small play area in a corner where Emma did homework or read while he attended meetings. "Dad, what does social investment mean?" she asked one afternoon. "It means using money to do things that improve the world," he responded, thoughtful. "Like building parks, or giving scholarships, or helping moms who are sick." Emma nodded, serious. "Then, when I grow up, I want to invest in kids who don't have dads." Benjamin hugged her without saying a word. Every year on the anniversary of Sarah's death, they visited Central Park. They left flowers under the tree where they used to sit, and Benjamin told Emma a new story that Sarah had shared with him, stories he kept in his memory like diamonds. "Mom said that reading the newspaper made you look wiser," Emma would say. "And you thought a wise man could be your dad," he'd respond, "and I wasn't wrong." That night, back home, Benjamin closed his laptop and went to see Emma, who had already fallen asleep, hugging the same teddy bear from that first day. He stayed in the doorway for a moment. 5 years ago, he never would have imagined this. He didn't believe in free love or second chances. His life was a schedule, a company, a routine. But now he had something more. He had a daughter, a story, a home. And he finally understood that the real legacy isn't built with buildings or stock shares. It's built with small acts, with shared ice cream, with bedtime stories, with promises kept. Because in the end, the love you choose is the most real of all.